next to me right here is Rasmus Andersson, who I would consider to be a technologist, creative, and a builder, and also a long-standing friend and colleague. Rasmus and I have known each other for almost 20 years now. It's getting up there.
A long time. We're old.
A long time. We're old guys. And I've been really fortunate to have worked alongside him across a whole suite of amazing companies. Now, imagine if your CV contained any of the following. Imagine if you were the founding designer of Spotify, if you were one of the co-creators of GraphQL, if you were one of the first designers of Figma, if you were the creator of the popular font Inter, that would be an incredible thing to have on your LinkedIn profile. In this case, Rasmus has done all of these things and much more, and we'll get to dive into that. In addition, get to talk to him a little bit about his newest venture called Playbit. And so, without much further ado, please give a warm hand to Rasmus Andersson.
Thank you, Soleio. And thank you, everyone, for showing up here. I hope we can talk about something interesting.
Yeah. So we'll have some time for Q&A, but I want to kick things off with this idea of -1. So -1 in South Park Commons parlance is this idea of exploring what's next and not committing to the first idea, but really being really experimental and active in navigating a whole set of questions around how should I apply myself? What should I do next? And you very recently started a new company. And I wanted to start off with the -1 phase for Playbit. Before it was Playbit, before it was a crystallizing vision in your head, what was the context in which you got started on this new venture?
Yeah, I love this. And Soleio and I were talking a little bit about just the general idea of -1 to 0, which is so fascinating in so many ways. But for Playbit, and we're kind of building an operating system, or are we anymore? Maybe I'll get into that in a moment. But for me, it started probably about 6 years ago or something like that. And I just started realizing how unhappy I was myself with the tools that we're using. And I've been sort of like a fan of the sort of whole Apple sphere since like I was kind of a teenager, you know, like 90s or something like that. One of my earliest real jobs as a designer, I had a spreadsheet like that I would print out and tape up on the wall. This is the 90s, after all, that would track exactly how many monies I was making so I could buy my first Mac. Because they're very expensive. Anyhow, so it took me several years. Anyhow, I was a big fan, and I felt a bunch of years ago that company and those products that have been speaking to me so much should no longer speaking to me. So that was kind of the impetus for me to just go and start figuring out what is this like thing inside me? What is this like emotion that I have? It didn't have a picture. It didn't have like a shape or sound, or didn't have any manifestation beyond like a growing feeling. And so that's kind of where it started for me.
And then how did you actually start to demystify it? Like, what were the ways in which you answered the early questions around, like, well, okay, I've got this feeling. I know what shape of company or product or brand is missing out there in the world, but how did you go about thinking about the form that it would ultimately take?
The first thing I did is what, you know, I've been given this advice many times in my life, is just to like understand more about myself and, you know, about those feelings and about what is that thing, right? Just make it more concrete just for myself in my own mind. But beyond that, when I started realizing that it was about like the experience I have with a computer, the experience I have writing software, the growing tower of complexity that just feels like sludge, all of these kind of like things that became more concrete. Then I started like experimenting with stuff, like playing with things, like a kid plays with like, you know, like something in front of you, you find a stick in the woods, and you're like, there's a cow now, moo, moo, you know? That sort of mentality with like the software in front of me. So it was just like, I don't know, months, maybe close to a year of just like playing around with stuff, just like trying to figure out what I was feeling.
And one of the things that's come into vogue of late is this idea of like a design engineer, in large part because of these new AI-powered tools that we have at our disposal that allow us to go from, you know, screenshot or text prompt or a combination of the two into living, usable software. But far before we had tools like Claude and Cursor and the such, I always thought of you as a design technologist, as a software maker. I think you've even built yourself in that manner. And it's a role that's still surprisingly rare. When you think about the way in which hybridizing the design and engineer in the work that you do, what are you finding has been like the way in which you sort of toggle between those two modes, if at all, to kind of navigate a space of opportunity or to create something that you then show to somebody else and decide, you know what, I'm building conviction around this, or like, actually, this doesn't work out in quite the way that I wanted to. Like, how has being a designer and engineer shaped the way that you've approached making products?
I love the question, and it's a big question. It's a deep question. We can probably talk all evening about the question, right? But I think the gist of it is, when I do my best work, I'm driven by like a means, like an end, right? And the work is a means to that end, if that makes sense. So when I do my worst work, is like when I'm too focused on the work itself, if that makes sense. So like if I'm too focused on like, oh, I'm gonna make like, for whatever reason, like I need to make like icons or something. I was taking a very simple example of something, right? And I get kind of like lost in just like making perfect icons. I tend to just do a bad job. But if I'm driven on something, for example, like my very first software that I wrote for real, not for like playing around and, you know, making jokes in school, was like this website. And this was like kind of at the dawn of the, you know, the web sort of thing. So it was a lot of things I had to like figure out. So I had a lot of conviction behind it. No one I knew anything about the web. I found a book in the bookshelves in the library that said Perl on it. And, you know, that sort of thing. You've heard that story before. And I had just this strong conviction behind, like, I want to make this like magazine that I was Xeroxing in school. I want to make this magazine like on this web page because that feels like magical. I want that shit, you know? And so that was a driver for me to both learn how to like program this website, figuring out all the things of like you had to send like physical post mail to register a domain name. and of course like the design aspects of it. You know, I was very interested in like, you know, art and drawing and stuff like that before. So yeah, for me at least, the key driver for sort of like straddling both, or straddling the line or racing the line really for me is like not to think about it as like being in a mode or thinking about it as like having a skill set, but more of like the learning to learn sort of challenge. Yeah. Like I need to like, I want a shed in my backyard. There are many options, right? You can like pay someone monies to put a shed there, right? Or you can like start building a shed today and it's probably gonna fall apart, at least if I built it. Or you can sort of like start somewhere. You can like, okay, what do I need to build a shed? Do I need a permit? What is even a permit, right? You kind of start resolving the picture of questions. That's generally how I approach it.
My version of this is I'm on my 4th version of a chicken coop. My first was not very good at containing chickens.
Those foxes there, the smart cunning foxes.
Coyotes, as it turns out. I like that you brought up this idea of like the beginner's mindset, because in some ways, Playbit seems to serve people who might be approaching the product with a beginner's mindset. Explain a little bit about like what Playbit seeks to provide the modern software creator. Like when you think about like the current product experience and your vision for Playbit, how does that experience of going and like learning how to make something feed into the philosophy behind this company and the product?
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer, I think, without it sounding confusing, but I will try. Today, there's just this like towering complexity of making software, and for a very good reason, right? For like 15, maybe 20 years by now, our industry as a whole has been like hyper-focused on like scale, because it's just been like an economic evolution that's been like out of this world, right? So it makes sense that we've been trading off and trading away things like shareware, you know, concepts like that, and things like, you know, simplicity and ease for the ability to scale and for the ability to things at scale to actually work and not break apart, right? But in the wake of all of that, which is great in so many ways, we've, you know, given up these things that are listed, and I feel like at least me and many people like me and who sort of, you know, are trying to build this thing, enjoy making software at a smaller scale. It's like a metaphor that I think can be helpful is, imagine your like room, apartment, house, whatever your sort of dwelling place. It's probably different from the person next to you. And it's not so that like we go out and we buy the Apple apartment and all the furniture is there and everything is perfect and we can change the carpet and that's about it, right? Like that's ridiculous. Like no one would do that. Yet that's what people do with software, right? Like we get this whatever object, right? And some of us go totally bananas and, you know, gonna like build your own sort of like Linux thing, and it looks crazy, and no one else can use it, and breaks every Tuesday, on drivers and stuff like that. And most other people just like pick up an Apple laptop or whatever it is, and you sort of like, yep, this thing sucks, but that's how it is. I'm just gonna live with it that way. And so looping that back to software, like making software, I feel great joy in building software. Sometimes for the purpose of just building it, sometimes for the purpose for building it for friends or for family, but like not for the world maybe. Yeah. And doing that today is like really hard. Yeah. And so a final piece is something that we use at Playbit as like one of our kind of North Stars, or sort of guiding lights, is Flash, Macromedia Flash, sort of like 2008 or something like that. Yeah. It was the cultural impact of Flash was like amazing. That's probably like, how do you create a culture? I don't know. That's hard. The software itself, I think the way it made you feel was very interesting. And so we hope that we can make you feel that same way of like, yeah, it's not perfect, but like I can make something very interesting, and I make something today. I don't need, like 7 days to like publish it on an app store.
And you got this company started around the time that GPT turned into ChatGPT, and now the entire industry and really the world is starting to absorb the ever-increasing capabilities of frontier models, right? Where I'm a Claude Code prompt away from being able to spin up a lot of software that I can then share with other people. How has the North Star for you guys evolved through this big transition that we're in the middle of?
I mean, it was clear to us, like right off the bat, 2020, 2021 or so, when we kind of started working on this, that this, like something was happening, right? It was very unclear. It's still kind of unclear to me what's happening, but so, we built, the first product that we built was like a new operating system. It's like as much Linux as Android is Linux. We use the Linux kernel, but that's about it. Everything else is like homemade, the whole thing. And in doing so, we sort of had to ask ourselves a few questions. And one of them was like, what is this like AI thing that's happening? How is that going to affect this? And so we just built our desktop in such a way that it's just this kind of, you can think of it as like almost like a dominant web browser, but the entire, like everything on your screen is like a structure. And anything running in that sort of workspace can just look at that structure. So you can put an agent in between. So that's maybe the closest to any sort of foresight that we had. And then the product we're building right now today is sort of a spin-off of that. Our early users, they were like, this is pretty cool, but like, I want to make software that like my friends can use. And we were like, okay, tell us more. And so now Playbit is like focused on the platform aspect. The operating system is still in the, that's still our sort of like 10 years from that kind of thing. Yeah.
One of the things I've always admired about you as a designer, from as far back as like Spotify was an incredible product when it came out. And I remember spending time just studying the product. Even the 404 pages felt like there was a structure that kind of like sat behind it, and the spirit of the person who made it. And so meeting you finally, like reaching out, bringing you to California and getting to meet you for the first time was like this moment of like a huge unveil of like, oh my gosh, this is the person who made this thing that I love. I love that from Spotify all the way through the work that you did at Dropbox and at Figma. There's like an incredible conceptual grounding behind a lot of like your most influential work, even Inter as a font. When you look across like the whole canvas of the work that you're proudest of, what is the design philosophy that you feel like is most representative of like how you approach your work, like what you think is self-consistent across all of it? How would you describe that spirit that I kind of intuited years and years ago?
That's interesting. I haven't actually thought of that myself. This is very interesting to hear you say that. It's probably like I'm a pretty technical person. Like I would say if I have any sort of background from my childhood, it's like that being drawn toward technical things and building mechanical things and stuff. So I think in a lot of my things, there's mechanics. There are underlying mechanics in almost everything, at least in my mind it is, like a typeface, like Enter, or a set of icons or something like that. I think they all share this like, or even software or programming language, there's like many examples that if you peel away the layers of onion skin, you kind of find the same thing on the inside, which is this set of like primitive mechanics that then influence like all the other things. So I think that's one of them. I think the other aspect of this is if you have a lot of chefs in the kitchen, you end up with a non-cohesive meal experience, right? you go to a restaurant and sometimes you can almost feel it as someone is like eating there at a restaurant, that like, oh, there was one person here who really had a vision, and like this whole set of like plates or this like meal came to like an experience, right? And sometimes it's the opposite, like regardless of like the level of the, you know, the restaurant, right? And I feel like good products are like that too. It doesn't mean that there's always one person who's a dictator, right? It could be a whole team, but like that magic of like there's a red thread going through it. And so for me, like having these underlying mechanics is kind of a cheat sheet or like a trick for getting to that place, both with other people or like something you do by yourself.
I love that you mentioned that, because in some respects, I've been thinking a lot about the role of design in this new age of AI. And it increasingly reminds me of the role of the showrunner, right? All of us have seen TV shows that have moved us, that we've sort of lived within those universes. And behind some of our favorite shows, there exists like a showrunner who shepherds the vision from start to finish, but more importantly, mobilizes extraordinarily complex teams around that creative vision. And it's remarkable. You'll have like these shows that are literally being filmed as they're airing in real time, and an entire like orchestration of people sort of doing different facets of the production in real time as it's out in market. And there are aspects to show running that remind me of making software. When you think about the role of the designer going into this huge paradigm shift, what are the aspects of it that you think will endure in spite of all the ways in which AI is going to automate the work that we do in the practice and the craft of software making?
I think everything will endure to some degree. Craft as well as, you know, like novelty, whatever that means, right? I think it's just my 2 cents. By the way, I would love to have more of a conversation at some point with all of you. So I feel a little bit like not imposter syndrome, but that type of feeling, you know? Like I feel like a lot of very, very interesting stuff is happening all around me. Like just being here a little early today and just like getting the feeling that there's probably 20 people here building stuff that I would just like want to dive myself into. So much stuff happening. Anyhow, so by no means do I know anything that you all don't really already know. So it's purely an opinion. I think that what's happening is that everything is just being like, the volume is just turned up. So someone who like cares about quality now has the ability to take that even further. Someone who cares about like a multitude of features can now have even more features. Someone who want to ship something faster can ship it faster, and so on. So I think it's like just a multiplier on all of these things across the board, pretty much. I am surprised though how many people in the software industry is like taking this new superpower and applying it to what is it called? What's the word? Quantity, right? There seems to be like, yeah. Do you agree with that?
Say more. What do you mean by quantity? Like as in like producing more code, producing more data?
Yeah.
Just making more stuff?
Not necessarily more code. I mean, that's a different problem, but it's like one I'm sure we'll solve by the next time next week. But no more of like you look at some software or whatever, and they're like, oh, AI, cool, like, you know, in a good way. And what do you do with that superpower? Well, you go out and you just like build more features, or like you enter new markets, or you like ship something on Tuesday instead of like next month, you know? But there seems to be very few companies that takes a superpower and just move at the same speed as they've done before, but like ships just like incredibly good stuff comes out the other end. It's like I go to a web page, and almost everything is on the web these days, and almost everything is still like buggy and janky. I mean, I have a huge respect for Notion, but and we use Notion every day at Playbit, and it's still like the fundamental stuff are still like buggy, right? And Notion is like, again, they're like doing a great job. So it's almost a testament to like how hard it must be to work at a company and have this like the red pill or the blue pill, you know? Am I gonna go full bananas on quality here? And like everyone around me are just gonna, the sales team are just gonna take out the whips and they're gonna be like, what's wrong with you? Or am I gonna take the blue pill and I'm just gonna be like, you know, shipping a bunch of stuff out there as I've been doing, and things are buggy and I'm fine with that. Like, it's a philosophical thing, I think, where you end up.
When in your current role as co-founder, as chief designer and exec, when you look back on your career, what were the things that you learned at Figma, at Facebook, at Dropbox, at Spotify, that you feel like is surprisingly relevant to the work that you do day in and day out. Because this room consists of technologists, creatives, and builders, some of whom are going to start new ventures or are in the process of it. What should they look back on in terms of things or experiences that are extremely relevant to the role of being a co-founder of a startup?
Yeah, it's where do we start? Well, one aspect that I believe is like, don't start a company until it's the last resort. That's my philosophy. Like if you feel that like you need to make a change in this world, right, for yourself, for other people, whatever, like go through the list of possible solutions, an exhausted list, and the last item is like go and start a company, because it's a lot of work, it's a lot of commitment, not just like time and money, but also like emotionally. You're gonna commit yourself, you're gonna commit to your coworkers, to if you have investors, like there's a lot of things. So I would say, yeah, for sure. Playbit is my second company. My first company I started when I was very young, and I made many mistakes, and I learned from some of them. Yeah. I think you should do it though. There's like, especially people from the design line of professions. I don't see a lot of designers going and saying like, fuck it, I'm gonna start a company. Like, do it. Exhaust that list first, right? It doesn't have to take like a year. It could take a weekend to exhaust the list, but like do it. And then just like try it, I think South Park Commons, where we are right now, is like an amazing ground for just like tapping into that, right? You have this feeling, you can't quite, like as I was sharing earlier, you can't quite like figure out what it is. Like that's the time when you need to find a way to tap into that and dig into that and understand what's going on, So important.
A big part of your career was the work that you did at Figma, and Figma had such an enormous influence on the field of design, right? It opened up the work that designers do to their counterparts. It changed the way in which we can kind of collaborate on software. It accelerated the whole field. Looking forward, what do you hope designers kind of take away from the lesson of Figma, and where do you want design tooling to evolve going forward? Like, what are the things or gaps you see day in and day out as you're kind of building software on your own? Like, what are the things that you're hoping that the design field converges on?
I mean, first off, something that was just amazing about working at Figma at the time was that there was just this culture of like doing things differently. That was like amazing. And every single individual who I worked with were just this like, I would just like, if that person went to start a company now and they put me with it, I'll come, Like every person was like that, right? Like every person had like an opinion about something that was like really exciting. Another thing that I think was, and I know this is not exactly the question you asked, but another thing that I think was so fascinating about how things were done at the time at Figma was this like deep intention around everything and moving slow. But moving slow with many things in parallel, like staggered, right? So like from the outside, Figma would ship something every month, maybe even more often than that. But internally, like a person would work on like one thing for like 1 year. And sometimes at the end of that 1 year, it would just like go into the bin and never ship. So that I think was like really cool to just like see from the inside and then having a very different effect on the outside. So I don't know if that like is some sort of like scratch on that question of yours, or
do you feel like the risk that we're running into now is that we're kind of speeding up design too fast? That it's like, okay, we're racing to output now, and so as a consequence, we're just doing stuff without actually thinking it through, or?
Yeah, so I think that this kind of almost like the second question is that about like, what now, right? And what is the beyond like today and into the future? Like, do we still have this, desktop computer with like a canvas on it and we click on buttons and stuff? Like, I don't know. But I think it's definitely so that the production aspect of almost everything, right, that's digital is not going away, but it's like, it's getting brutally like cheaper, right? It goes from like 1,000 units of value to like 0.001 units of value. It's not just like a 10x, or it's like many orders of magnitude, right? It's like overnight sort of like kind of thing. And I think that's a good thing, right? And I think tools like Figma need to figure out how to like not focus so much on the production, which 5 years ago, like production was like a huge deal, right? Because you're just slow. And so a lot of the functionality in tools like Figma, and even like tools that came before it, like Sketch and Illustrator and stuff, it's all focused on production. So that's going away. But what's left is like what's actually hard about design, right? So that's gotta be just like, what is the intention behind it? Like, what is the, like, what brought you to this design in the first place, you know? Like, I feel like, I think Susan Kerr, has she been here? You've been talking with her in a couple of different places, right? She's like a person who, like her tools and the way she works, like fascinating by itself, but like when we think about someone like Susan Kerr and her influence, we don't tend to think about like, you know, her new notebooks with like how she painted pixels and had to like translate that into like memory addresses. I think we think about Susan as like someone who like saw a beef and had to think like, how do I represent a beef in like 12 by 12, just like ones and zeros. I have no grayscale, and she did it, you know? That part to me feels like the interesting part of design. And I'm not, at some point, maybe AI will like find a way to accelerate that. Maybe as a therapist, you know, sort of helping you as like an Eliza for design, you know?
Yeah. I'm really glad you brought her up, because what I've admired about Susan Kerr is like her ability to stay close to the metal, continue to evolve her own practice, and ship work that meets the moment of its time. Like, we met Susan Kerr at Facebook because she worked on virtual GIFs, because it seemed like a really cool thing to do at the time. I was astonished that we even were able to hire her, let alone get to work side by side. And more recently, you know, people are running around San Francisco wearing ClawCon hats, and there she is again, like designing the logo for the latest kind of community-driven initiative that's springing from this area. And she leads me to wonder, from your vantage point, like, how have you seen yourself evolve through the years? Like, what has sort of remained persistent, but what is different about Rasmus Andersson now in the role of a co-founder from the Rasmus Anderssons of years past? Like, how have you found yourself evolving in your own design practice and your own approach to making software?
Well, I still feel like lost on a daily basis, not in a bad way, but like kind of like lost in a meadow, you know, sort of exploring type of lost. So I don't think that has changed really. It's just like, I think day to day, mostly there's been just changes for myself personally. That's probably not that interesting to talk about. Like, you can just guess it, you know, management type of things, right? It's not a big deal, not so interesting. I think when I look back at my old work, sometimes I'm like, holy shit, that was like really good. And then I'm getting like nervous because, like, you know, that kind of makes me feel, I don't take myself very seriously, but you know, I kind of look back and I'm like, oh, that was really good. That was like peak me, like, you know, 2005 or something. But then I'm like, no, that was good, but that was good in a vacuum at that point in time, and like I'm still like okay. And so for me, it's like, it's this constant like evaluation of like, am I progressing? Am I learning new things? Like, I don't have a lot of spare time, like having a little kid and a company and all of these things at the same time, but during lunch, I usually listen to podcasts about everything except technology. And so that just helps me just think about like other things. Like, I listen to something about, you know, some island in Scotland, or, you know, something random, you know, sheep that eat kelp.
I love that. I've always admired you for the work that you've done on Inter, because as I've said to you many times, I think it's a thing that could appear on Mars one day, right? Like, it's a thing that now that you've introduced it to the world, it will not go away. Software comes and goes, typefaces just live forever. And what did making a typeface like Inter teach you that you feel like has sort of become like a reusable block of knowledge that's applied to other areas outside of typography?
Oh, as many of your other awesome questions, man. It's like so much to unbox. But one thing for sure is finding like a right ratio between impact and effort. I think Inter is one of those things. Sure, I've spent like 10 years on it, and who knows how much of my time on it, right? But so there's a lot of effort behind it. But I think it's one of those types of efforts that like has a very disproportionate like impact from the effort. For example, something I did when we were at Facebook together was like, I put together a Mac app that was basically just a web view for Facebook Messenger. It was like a bunch of people around me were like, I want to use Facebook Messenger, but like not as like in my web browser. So I did that, and he got like millions of installs. Yeah. Like I spent 45 minutes on the first version, I think. Like, new project, next code, web view, you know, like basically that's it, an icon. And it had this like insanely disproportionate thing. And then I can list for the remainder of the evening, to bore you to death, like projects that I made, spent thousands of hours on, you never heard of them because they had no impact at all. So that, I think, is something that I didn't see at all when I started working on Inter, but in hindsight has been one of those projects. I gotta say though, something that is like amazing about working on typeface is it's something like, it's almost like in the field of design, you might think about cars as like a unique type of thing to design, because it's both like, and architecture is a little bit like that too. It's not strictly design as in like signage for like roads, right? It's very technical, and it's not design as in like expressing myself through kind of art, like graphic design, like a poster. It's somewhere like magically in between, and it's not industrial design or like, you know, it's sort of like it has to, the car that works the best design for a car is like at the point in time for those like 12 dimensions of things, right? So yeah, a typeface is a little bit like that. It's like, first off, it's something that has at least some remote resemblance to permanence in the digital like world, right? Like software in general, like doesn't exist, right? Software is like a book, right? Like the code that you write is like an edition printed on paper of your book, right? Translated to like Icelandic, right? That book, that particular like print with a particular like flow of text in that particular language is like not your book or not your story. So that's kind of software, but typefaces aren't like that. It's kind of weird, you know. And another aspect of it that's kind of cool is that you can put in 10 minutes here and 10 hours there, and they add up over time, which I don't think is true with other software, because the rate of decay of any type of regular software is very high, right? Like 2 weeks is my cutoff. If I have not like worked on something for 2 weeks, I trash it and start over. But with a typeface, like that decay is extremely low, in some cases 0. So super fun. If you haven't made a typeface, like make one. It's not that hard, I promise you. I don't say that to like sound like a dick or something. Like it's legitimately not that hard. You can learn it in a weekend.
Like you and our former colleague Aaron Satig have both like given me like the best arguments for why every designer should like do a poster design. They should design a website, make an app, and then design a typeface. So I will answer this call to arms, and I'll send you my shitty typeface. Are there other projects of this nature that you're interested in pursuing at some point, like over time? Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but I feel as though one of the things that's so amazing about being a creative and a technologist is when you do one thing, you're like, oh, that wasn't that hard. And then you do another thing, oh, that's not that hard either. Then all of a sudden it starts to open up the canvas of like, what else could I do if I had time and energy? Are there other projects that you would love to embark on down the road?
Oh, so many. There's like, on one hand, there are things that I feel like someone needs to work on. Like we're messing up this planet, like there's just so much there. And there's a drive for me to want to apply myself to at least make some impact, there, positive impact. And then there's like, another aspect of just, my personal life is that I have a lot of these like skills. They're mostly technical. And I have very few skills where I can like gift you something through my skills. So what I mean is like play music or cooking food, or I'm trying to be better at cooking food, but like you don't want to hear me play music. And so I have this neighbor, and he like bakes bread. He bakes bread like not fully professional, kind of semi-professional. He's kind of retired, bakes bread for fun, sells it in the grocery store. So serious bread maker. And sometimes like us neighbors, we just like hang out, and he'll bring bread, and he'll like gift a little piece of loaf that he made like for me. And I feel like, oh my God, like David, thank you for your bread, and I like speak with him on the street like a few days later and tell him about the bread and stuff. That is something I would love to tap into. I don't know if it's software can be that or something else. And then finally, I want to just like, I think, build physical things, not because I care about permanence, not at all. When I'm dead, like, burn me and forget about me. I don't care about that at all. But just the fact of like something tangible. Like in my life, I want to have as few computers as possible. Maybe it's weird to say as like a software person, but like if I have a car, I want a car with as few screens and computers as possible, right? I don't want any like smart appliances at home, or like none of that stuff, right? So I seek a life that is like calmer and more physical, I think. So those are 3 areas for me. Yeah.
So you are a relatively new father. You're like a sophomore in your sophomore year.
Yeah, no idea what I'm doing.
I can't help but want to talk a little bit about that transition for you too, because I found, at least for me, Parenthood was a major reframing exercise and like what it is that I'm going to do on this planet. How has that experience like shaped the way in which you approach every single day? Like how is it sort of shaping the way that you think about the world to come?
I think it probably has changed me in ways that I haven't realized yet. Mainly, so my kid is like just over 2 years. So it's like brand new for me, you know. Like, one aspect is very practical. You just like end up with very little time for yourself. So you kind of like have to, if you did 10 things in a day before, you have time to do maybe one thing, and you're more intentional about what I'm doing with that time. I mean, there's just like the obvious things that go beyond, you know, technology or anything. Just like, you know, the emotional connection that you make with someone who's like, you know, your closest buddy, you know, like that's pretty amazing. I don't know if that influences my work in a way though, beyond just practical aspects.
I love that. For folks that are thinking about starting something new and sort of hear this idea that like it's an exercise in self-knowledge, you know, you were talking about looking back on your past work and be like, man, I fucking crushed it there. Like I did amazing work. What advice do you give to them in being really intentional about finding that sharp part of themselves, that part that could ultimately be the decisive factor in their success as an entrepreneur? What advice do you have for them?
I mean, I'll offer this model, if you like. If life has no determined meaning from the outside in, therefore life is meaningless as a concept. Therefore, you are free to define your own purpose in life. And so now, like that's like an amazing, like hair-raising like thing. If you think about it, like, oh my God, I have no obligations in the universe, right? It's like there's nothing, like if I just go and sit in a corner and do nothing, like the universe will not change, right? For me, that's like a very freeing thing. I think for some people it's like terrifying, but it can be both too. I think in the mindset, then figure out like what would I like to fill that like void with? What are the parameters and the constraints, kind of like a sign mindset, right? What are the constraints I want to set up for myself? Right? Maybe it's just like I just want to optimize for net happiness, or like I want to like the day I die, I want to feel like, you know, I had like a positive impact on my like local society, whatever it is. That can become the guidepost, like the flag on the mountaintop, and then just do something. I think the worst thing you can possibly do is to think about it and not do something. It's much better to do something than to think about doing something. Maybe it sounds like a really dumb thing, but legit, like so many people who I meet, and I'm sure you all meet people like this too, like will tell stories about like, oh, I had that idea. They just made that thing. I had that idea. Or like, yeah, but like and ideas are worth nothing. Like you make it or you don't make it. It's as simple as that, right? So you just like make something, I think.
And then this is kind of a selfish question. You've gotten to work at some of the most consequential companies of our age, right? In almost rapid succession. You've gotten to work in these cultures that went to go on and spawn new businesses, new entrepreneurs, new ways of making software, new kinds of products. When you look across that set, what have they taught you about building culture, winning, finding your path? Is there a through line in any of them? Is there something when you reflect back on it that you're like, you know what, this is what I want to capture in my own company, in my own work? What did those companies teach you? Because it's such a unique vantage. Like I didn't work at Spotify,
Yeah.
right? I didn't work at Figma for years and kind of help build that business from scratch in a way that you did. What did all these companies teach you about startups and about success in life?
I think the absolutely most important thing is like just that people with very strong opinions who like really care, whatever that means, right? I think usually it's a bit of a cliche, but like it's the people, you know, that makes the company kind of thing. And that's really true. I think that's like, that is the thing that has been so true with these experiences. And sure, I've had quite a few of these, but by no means could I say that like, you know, I can measure with other people's experiences. So what do I know? But just looking at those companies and like what led to some measure of success, like internally for myself or for like the company as a business, right? I think it was that really mainly perseverance, you know, of those people. And I think that there's so many like qualities like perseverance that comes out of like strong opinions and passion, right? If you think about it, like someone who can be externally motivated by things like, fame or money or some sort of desire of power or whatever, right? But it only goes so far. It only gets you. It's like, I hope I don't offend anyone now, but like it kind of like gets you to the Amazon level of quality, like where things are good enough to like use. People are not complaining anymore, but it's not better than that, right? That's what I think what you get when you have motivators that are not like intrinsic, like I just want to make the best like fake robot plant I can, or whatever it is,
Rasmus, thank you for coming and hanging out, man. We're really excited to see what Playbit becomes. For folks who are interested in Playbit, what would you recommend they do this evening in front of their computers? Can they sign up?
Yeah, you can just go to our website and you can download.
Great.
Right now it's like for Mac only. You can grab, if you want to try the operating system that we released about a year ago, you can run that on pretty much anywhere. But if you have a Mac, we have a very nice experience for you. That's just like plop a thing down and click it. If you want to try the new thing that we released just a few months ago, it's like very early and very Yankee as it should be, very embarrassed of what it is. You can just go to the website, click a big download button. Again, that one is Mac only right now, but it will soon be other platforms. Yeah, and now you can build little things. You can make little cool games and stuff. We have just a skill that just comes with it, full compiler tools and everything. You don't need to open a terminal or anything like that. The thing just works. Yeah, you can build little things, and very soon you can just share them with a friend, and they can just do multiplayer on sort of the platform level.
I think on behalf of folks at all stages of their careers, you've been such an inspiration in terms of how you've empowered us, how you've injected joy into everything you created, and all the different products that have shaped our lives. So on behalf of South Park Commons and everyone here, thank you. Thank you so much.